How's it going, everybody? Today's video is called Solar Intelligence, Yellow Light, Sacred Symbolism, and Contemplative Attention. Our planet of the day is the sun, which corresponds with the color yellow for me. I am wearing two different types of yellow. Today I want to present a synthesis of astronomy, optics, contemplative psychology, religious symbolism, and Western esoteric tradition through the figure of the sun, with special attention to the names Nachiel and Sarath, the intelligence and spirit of the sun, the dualistic properties, if you will. You'll see in the next couple of videos that everything is going to be based around duality and balance, because balance is truly all there ever is and all there ever will be. Even in chemistry, and for organic life to be, there has to be a certain balance of molecules and chemicals and particles in order for life to abundantly exist. The numerology of the solar magic square, which is going to be based on 36, the symbolic use of the yellow light, and the broader question of whether disciplined faith and focused attention can create a meaningful bridge between physical reality, inner experience, and sacred interpretation. My purpose is not to claim that modern physics proves ceremonial magic, nor to reduce religion to metaphor, but to place these domains into a careful and intellectually honest relationship. The sun, in astronomy, is the central star of our solar system, a near spherical body of hot plasma powered by nuclear fusion in its core, where hydrogen is converted into helium and vast amounts of energy are radiated outwards as electromagnetic radiation. It is the source of nearly all energy that drives Earth's climates, photosynthesis, circadian entrainment, and the visible day. Because the sun is not merely visible but life-sustaining, nearly every single major civilization developed theological, mythic, or ritual language around it. In that sense, solar spirituality began not with superstition, but with the deepest human recognition that light, heat, order, and life are inseparable from the sun's presence. In Western occult tradition, especially in the Renaissance esoteric current associated with Agrippa and the Grimorial framework that followed, the sun is not only a celestial body, but a layered spiritual principle. Within that tradition, Nachiel is named as the intelligence of the sun, and Sarath as the spirit of the sun. This distinction matters here. The intelligence of a planet is traditionally understood as its higher, ordering, harmonizing, and illuminating aspect, the as above, while the spirit is treated as its more forceful, direct, raw, and operational current, or so below, the lesser energies. If one were to translate that into a modern symbolic language, one might say that Nachiel represents solar coherence, noble radiance, leadership, clarity, and right alignment, while Sarath represents the fierce, consuming, uncompromising, and potentially destructive force of solar power when it is concentrated without proper moral or psychological balance. And balance is going to be a key factor here, as above, so below, karma, dharma, the wheel of fate. All these things are integral to one another and they interoperate within one itself. Now, in other words, Nachiel is the sun as illumination and sovereign order. Sarath is the sun as intensity, combustion, exposure, and force. These figures belong to occult theology, not laboratory physics. But they are useful because they preserve an ancient recognition that every life-given power also contains the possibility of excess. The sun's magical square, or Kamiya, expresses the same marriage of structure that force through numbers. The traditional magic square of the sun is a 6x6 square using the numbers 1 through 36 arranged so that each row, column, and diagonal totals 111, or 111. And the total of the entire square is 666, for 666, the sun being intrinsic to natural light and natural order, 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. These are key components to organic life. It's in the number. It's not the number of the beast. We are the beast, technically, so that is why it's numbered to beast. It is inherently relevant to organic life structure. In occult numerology, this does not primarily signify later moral panic around that number. Rather, it expresses solar completeness, order, and balanced radiance distributed through a structured field. 6 has long carried solar associations in the system because it suggests symmetry, harmony, centrality, and visible patterns for corners of a central figure. The solar square becomes a diagram of ordered energy, a numeric sun wheel in which force is not chaotic, but arranged, as is everything in the universe, even though it inherently presents itself as chaotic and random. It is not. For a symbolic practitioner, that square encodes the principle that true solar power is not random brightness, but structured emanation. It shines, but it shines in law. If we now turn to color, the scientific distinction must be made carefully here. Again, I'm trying to project this as a scientifically relevant factual statement while including supernatural phenomena, my perspective of the unknown, and science and religion as a bridge to divinity. Now, yellow is a visible color typically associated with the wavelengths of roughly 570 to 590 nanometers, or about 5,700 to 5,900 angstroms. That's going to be important later when we get into the meditative energy channeling, where I explain how we go about pulling on that yellow frequency. This gives us a precise optical range for yellow light. When someone speaks of channeling the angstroms of yellow, as I reference often, and people that personally know me, when they ask me why I wear the colors that I wear, and I tell them that I'm using it to channel the angstrom of said color from the spectral ray, it is no different than pour breathing the elements when somebody is taking in the element of water, taking in the element of air, taking in the element of water or fire or whatever, and pour breathing it into your body, where we're breathing in our arm and our legs and our stomach and our solar plexus through our head and in our nose naturally, which is the actual root of, breathing. The most accurate scientific interpretation is that yellow light is that approximate wavelength band is being used as a sensory and symbolic focus. We should also note that color experience is not only external physics, but internal perception. The retina, neural pathways, and visual cortex all participate in producing what we call yellow. So yellow is both a measurable band of visible light and a perceptual event within consciousness. This does matter because a contemplative solar practice can use yellow in two valid but distinctive ways. First, yellow may be used physically as a wavelength associated light cue that alters perception and attention tones. Psychology will show that the color yellow typically enhances happiness, joy, it creates feelings of pleasure, and just overall bliss. People get happy with the color yellow. Secondly, yellow may be used symbolically as the color of warmth, radiance, vitality, authority, revelation, and conscious life. Science can describe the optics and neurophysiology. Religion and esotericism provide the interpretive framework that makes yellow feel solar in the deepest human sense. Now, as I stated in the last video, I used a quantum lattice to communicate with my celestial bodies. The phrase tapping into the quantum field here requires equal care. In modern physics, quantum field theory describes the behavior of fundamental particles of excitations of underlying fields. It does not establish that consciousness tunes into named planetary intelligences by selecting a visible color band. So if one is speaking rigorously, yellow light does not scientifically prove communications with Nachiel, Soreth, or the sun itself. However, the concept may still be used as a contemplative and philosophical model if presented honestly. One may say that focused attention, repeated symbol use, and emotional salience, and faith create a highly ordered interior condition in which insight, intuition, archetypal imagery, and morally charged cognition become more accessible here. In that metaphorical sense, a quantum lattice field can be described as a structured inner matrix of perception and meaning rather than a verified occult channel in the laboratory sense. Faith becomes a stabilizing carrier here. Focus becomes the tuning function. Inner guidance becomes the interpretive layer through which symbolic or spiritual content is received, and or our receiver, our inner antenna, our third eye, if you will. The practice is real as an alteration of consciousness state. The interpretation of that state as communication with solar intelligences belongs to religion, mysticism, or magic rather than empirical physics. Although they do go hand in hand at some point, you do need to comprehend the scientific physics aspect to get into the magical practitioner aspect of it, to understand input-output flow of human consciousness into the flow of the universe, to receive back input from the universe itself and cosmic order, from divine sources. That distinction actually strengthens the synthesis rather than weakening it here. A person sitting in meditation before yellow light or even visualizing a yellow glowed field in darkness is changing several variables at once. The sensory field is simplified, visual attention here is narrowed, symbolic coherence increases, and the mind is invited into a solar pattern where clarity instead of diffusion, warmth instead of numbness, and uprightness instead of collapse, revelation instead of concealment is occurring. So when people see me wearing yellow, I am drawing on those colors, I am spreading that energetic wavelength of yellow to other people, spreading feelings of happiness and joy, and I'm increasing probability amplitude while increasing my natural auric field, which is amplifying my electromagnetism, which makes a law of attraction cause and effect here. People are naturally attracted to my energy field because it is expansive through spreading positive charged electromagnetic field impulses into their potentially negatively charged electromagnetic fields. So positive, negative, go hand in hand. This is why people seem to, the saying is, go to the light, get drawn to the light. This is why moths go to the light. They are positively drawn from a negative aspect to a higher charge. It's a way of elevating your surrounding people and uplifting and ascending the collective at large. Now, if they contemplate Sarath, you're going to reflect on the dangerous side of solar force. Ego, inflation, exposure, spiritual pride, scorching intensity, domination, and the violence that can emerge when the light is severed from humility. This goes hand in hand with karmic behavior, dharmic behavior, karma cycle, dharma cycle, up, down, as above, so below, in, out, God, devil, good, bad, left, right. Like these things all are interchangeable no matter what word you're using as a label from a human perspective. The spiritual above higher outlook on the larger situation is always going to be interoperable. It's always going to be the same concept intrinsically. It's going to be balance and duality. It's all there is. Now, what science can reasonably say is that meditation may improve attention, regulation, emotional monitoring, and self-awareness, and that color and ritual can influence mood and expectation. What religion and esotericism add is that these altered states can be interpreted as encounters with archetypal or spiritual intelligences here. This is where the input-output model becomes useful. If we think of solar contemplative work as a communication architecture similar to a control system, the input consists of the chosen day and hour, yellow or gold visual focus, prayer invocation, solar symbols, breath regulations, posture, and the conscious intention to align with truth, vitality, illumination, or right authority. The processing layer here includes attentional concentration, emotional resonance, autobiographical memory, ethical reflection, bodily regulation, symbolic association, and the selective amplification of solar themes such as courage, confidence, generosity, truthfulness, and self-revelation. The output here includes increased clarity. You're going to have strengthened will, restored confidence, heightened purpose, more stable personal authority, and sometimes a painful but necessary exposure of vanity, falsehood, or self-deception. Either way, it's going to push you to a more positive direction and get you back on track, I guess you could say. Now, the feedback loop is going to be behavior. This is where certain things get analyzed from a pattern behavior standpoint, because this is where you can determine where a person is within their own identity, where they're going, and you can get a projection and or prediction, if you will. Try to predict somebody's behavior based off of behavioral patterns and do a psychological analysis, cross-reference it with solar energies, and how they're choosing the up or down, positive or negative aspects of said energies. You can kind of predict where somebody's headed in the medium to long term. Now, if a solar practice is genuine, it should not merely produce dramatic feeling. It should result in cleaner action, truer speech, more disciplined leadership, healthier self-respect, greater alignment between what one radiates and what one actually is. It's like when somebody goes to work and they have a work personality, and they go home and they have a home personality, and they're two separate things. you're not in alignment. I don't care what you say, what you preach, who you know, who you think you are, how much money you have, how much power and pull you have. You're wearing a false mask. If this life and this life don't match, and this personality are not consistent, you are putting on a front for other people who are also probably putting on a front, for other people who are also putting on a front, for other people who are also putting on a front. You see the perpetual cycle there? It's very bad. At some point, somebody's got to break that cycle by being their authentic self. Now, that gets a lot of backlash. It gets a lot of hate. It gets a lot of, slander. People talk about it. They don't know how to take it because they don't know how to take somebody who truly does not give a fuck about somebody else's opinion. It throws them off. It fucks up their whole day because they are so in the groove of being in the soul wrath energy that they don't know how to identify with somebody in the Nachiel energy. So they usually try to attack it, try to make them back down to where they are when they can learn from this person and ascend with. Sorry, I have to split this into 2 videos. Apparently, my electronics seem to be malfunctioning. Only when I record, it's the craziest thing. Now, continuing where I left off, rather than ascending with somebody and learning from them, they'd rather try to break it down because it's harder to put into work than to destroy somebody. It's easier to cut what you don't understand than to actually self-reflect and work on yourself. In this sense, the sun is less of a fantasy of power than a calibration of identity. Now, the gods and goddesses associated with the sun across traditions deepen this picture here. In Egypt, Ra, who my son's middle name is after, and later forms such as Amun-Ra embody kingship, creative radiance, and the ordering power of daylight. In Greece, Helios represents the visible solar charioteer, while Apollo, though not originally identical to the sun, later absorbs major solar attributes of illumination, music, healing, prophecy, and intellectual clarity, which is why I named my son Apollo. In Roman religion, Sol and Sol Invictus expresses unconquered radius and imperial certainty. In Japanese tradition, Amaterasu embodies solar sovereignty, order, and life-giving brilliance. In Vedic and Hindi tradition, Surya carries light, health, vision, vitality, and sacred order. These deities differ in theology, but they converge in one profound pattern. The sun reveals, animates, judges, nourishes, and centralizes. It gives life, but it also makes concealment very difficult. So they all have the same root, different names, different faces, same entity. That is why solar energy is spiritually dualistic. Its benefits are immense: vitality, integrity, purpose, confidence, clarity, leadership, healthy visibility, righteous courage, noble generosity, and the ability to sustain others through one's own coherence. Yet, its dangers are equally real: arrogance, egocentrism, domination, overexposure, burnout, pride, excessive certainty, lack of receptivity, and the temptation to confuse illumination with superiority. In karmic and dharmic language, solar force can represent both the reward of rightful alignment and the exposure of accumulated distortions, which always happens even if it's been going on for a long time. A dharmic sun lifts a person into right action, ethical center, purposeful labor, and life-giving presence. A karmically burdened sun may first expose vanity, false identity, abuse of authority, or the misuse of charisma. This is where the season of Jove imagery becomes useful. Solar development is not always immediate abundance. Sometimes the sun first burns away what was built around the self, but not rooted in the true self. In that sense, there is a solar ordeal before there is a solar harvest. One may pass through humiliation before integrity, through collapse before radiance, through exposure before authority, yet once the false self has been scorched away, the abundant harvest becomes durable because it is no longer built on illusion. The symbolic and theological link between the sun and the Son of God belongs here as well, provided it is framed carefully so I don't sound too, crazy about it anyways. Christianity does not teach that Christ is literally the astronomical sun. But throughout Christian symbolism, Christ is repeatedly associated with light, rising, glory, illumination, righteousness, revelation, resurrection, and the triumph of life over death. Early Christian art and theology often used the solar language to speak about divine radiance, the light of the world, and the dawning of salvation. In symbolic terms, the sun and the sun converge in a motif of life-given light that reveals truth, drives out darkness, and stands at the center of all order. The distinction is theological. The sun is a created star. The sun is a divine and Christian doctrine. Yet, spiritually, the correspondence is powerful because both serve as images of centrality, illumination, and the victory of life. If one were speaking in symbolic theology rather than dogmatic identity, one could say the sun is nature's visible sermon about the archetype of divine light, while the Son of God is that light personalized in salvation history. When yellow is used contemplatively in this larger framework, the practice becomes both sensory and sacramental. One may sit in stillness, reduce the field of distraction, and allow yellow or gold to become the visual anchor. And this is the important part. When I'm wearing my colors, it is because they are physical anchors to the meta for me. One may breathe steadily and imagine the yellow ray not as a magical proof, but as a disciplined focus line here. The angstrom range in scientific language is going to define the optical band that we perceive. In spiritual language, the band itself becomes the chosen emblem of solar consciousness. By faith, the practitioner opens inwardly. We are receptive to these natural existing frequencies that exist in the air all around us all the time. By inner guidance, the practitioner interprets what emerges. That's epiphanies, if you will. If one evokes Nachiel, the meditation may seek coherence, right authority, truth, and noble vitality. If one contemplates Sorath, the meditation may examine destructive ambition, pride, excessive force, and the danger of solar power without moral tempering. The true test of the practice is not intensity of sensation, but fruit. Does the work leave the person more honest, more courageous, more life-giving, more disciplined, more centered, and less ruled by false glitter? If so, the solar current has been integrated wisely. If not, then one may have generated atmosphere without transformation. What the synthesis ultimately proposes is that physics, religion, and esoteric symbolism do not need to cancel one another to be meaningful. Physics explains the star, the light, the visible band of yellow, the color that we perceive, our perception, our physical 3D perception. Psychology explains attention, salience, meditation, and symbolic metacognition. This is our anchor to our psychological profile internally. Religion and occult philosophy explain why the sun continues to function as one of the deepest archetypes of truth, power, presence, and moral visibility. So I can see the yellow anchors me to what is personified of truth and illumination and authority. So in my mind, I can let my subconscious run rampant with that and build a whole dominion all its own inside of my mind and exude those principles that I take from that inner framework in my own metaphysical universe. Now, the language of Nachiel and Sorath gives personality two sides to the same reality here. Again, yin, yang, left, right, karmic, dharmic. It's all about balance and duality. There will never be anything that is or was that is not of a balanced or dualistic standpoint. We have a rise to power tyrant, and then a fall to empire tyrant. That is a cause and effect, a karmic, dharmic situation, a yin to a yang scenario, an up and a down. It always is, no matter what, and even Fibonacci sequence can prove that. We have a bigger up and a bigger down, and then it just continues perpetually. It is a continuous cycle that just is ongoing forever, perpetually, always, infinitely, without proper numerological identification. It is just abundantly, infinitely perpetual without human constructs. Non-linear, even. The sun that orders and the sun that burns are those two realities. The sun that blesses and the sun that exposes, the sun that crowns and the sun that tests. Yellow becomes not merely a color, but a discipline of orientation, a visible reminder that true radiance is not noise, but coherence, not self-worship, but right center, not mere brilliance, but life in alignment with Source. God, Source, all ties into everything. Well, you're doing planetary magic. God created planets. God created space. God gave me intelligence. I have the intelligence to connect. Quantum field exists because God put the quantum field in place. The quantum field dictates the laws of reality. The laws of reality dictate how I communicate and or exist and or operate within this three-dimensional world. And I think in a quantum sense because the brain processes on a quantum level. So I am always in tune and connected to the quantum source because source gave me that ability to connect and fine tune to the quantum level to communicate with all the things that are. So in that sense, the planetary magic of the sun approached carefully may be understood not as superstition in conflict with science, but as a contemplative theology of light, a way of thinking, praying, and perceiving that seeks to unite visible energy, sacred meaning, ethical transformation, and enduring human intuition that illumination is never just physical. How often have you just gotten a feeling about something and it was a physical thing? No, you can't explain what it came from. You just know that it came and was from somewhere. You just can't identify from what? The quantum field. It's quantum lattice. You're not comprehending that it exists, but just because you don't comprehend that it exists doesn't mean it's not there. It's like gravity. It's like air. It's like the law of thermodynamics. It just is. It just happens. It's just an automatic chemical reaction within a quantum lattice of communication through, fascia fibers within the bodies, and that's when our little, extra peripherals go off, and then we get those little inklings. We just know because it's all interconnected. All that is and all that was is always going to be all in one. It's unification of all energies. Huh? What? Alrighty. But that's all I have today going over solar energies. I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully you guys found this entertaining or at least educational at a minimum. Trying to make it as comprehensible as possible while remaining scientifically enough to connect the two, religion and science, because I personally don't see a difference. And there's going to be many people that argue with me that science and religion are inherently different, but religion don't exist without science and science don't exist without religion, because geometry exists through science, but geometry is a philosophical comprehension of being. With sacred geometry, which is of a religious aspect, they are one and the same. I don't see the difference here. It all connects to the meta. It all allows us to communicate and be and exist and think and communicate on levels that are far beyond standard civilian comprehension, which is where I get a lot of my ideas. I just sit and be. I just am. Without concern for external judgment or thoughts. It's just, I just naturally let it flow. Whatever comes to my crazy little head, I go with for today. And if I can make at least one person smile, I did my job. So, it's just, it is what it is. I'll see you in the next video.